7 PM, so we'll call the meeting to order. Clerk, give a roll call, please.
Michael Doherty,
Present.
Fred Schmore,
Present.
Ronald Cabana,
Here.
Roy Bradford,
Not here.
Lenny Lessig,
Here.
Michael Bernardi, Jeff Keller,
Here.
David Richardson,
Here.
and myself, David Fortin.
Okay, thank you. We need to seat an alternate, because Mr. Blaggart is not here.
I would move that Michael Bernardi be seated.
Second it. Got a motion and a second, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. All right, next order of business is to approve the minutes from the December 11, 2018 regular meeting. Get a motion on that?
So moved.
We have
Right.
Motion, Fred.
a second on that?
I'll second that one.
John Cabana seconds it. Okay, discussion.
Maybe a couple
Go ahead, Peter.
of. Page 2. This is item 6. It's
If you just
Fourth.
speak up.
it's item 6, page 2, fourth paragraph, starts with, E. Richardson also had a question.
Yes.
The whole point of that discussion revolved around the $30,000 that was transferred to the non-lapsing account. I would suggest after the second sentence, was no change in balance from the previous year, there'd be another sentence, add D. Richardson and M. Van Deventer agreed that it appeared $30,000 had been transferred to the non-lapsing account, came from the healthcare reserve service account, the legality of which needs to be addressed. And that's what we agreed to. And I think it's underway.
Yeah, well, we'll be discussing that, I guess, tomorrow.
And then.
You good with that, Terry?
I've got it written down here, so.
Oh.
Got the handle. 7E. Which would be the page. There should be a paragraph, a new third paragraph before the operatic part. Because one of those discussion items was the surplus in the unemployment account. That's not mentioned at all. We should add a paragraph. D. Richardson commented on school business manager's written response to the issue of the $50,000 surplus in the unemployment account for 2018 and its discrepancy with the FICA account. That's on video, but you can go watch it if you want, 1 hour and 26 minutes.
Right. But David, it's not a transcript. Terry does her best to capture the spirit of the moment.
Yeah, no, I understand. So
So-
that's a whole item that's missing.
Well, I'm not sure we
Didn't touch on it.
captured every single item. Did the best that she could.
No, I'm not criticizing.
I realize that. I'm just discussing it with you. I mean, as we go forward, we'll not have 8 pages of minutes. Something you truly feel is important. Can you present a sentence?
And that's the sentence that I just read,
Okay.
and I gave it to her.
Okay. All right.
Anyone else?
I've got one more.
One more? Okay, go ahead.
Actually, two more. Fourth paragraph, last sentence, which page? That, following the one I just said here, we're still in E, item 7E, page 4. What was actually said was, just get it straight here. Manager salary at the beginning of the 4th line. Manager salary, and add it to the budget. Actually, he said last year, not in the spring. And added the work of the business manager, not Jay Thurlow, was worth that amount, and that it would help in recruiting in the spring. That's actually what he said, and the point being that he said he had done it the previous year. And he was a business manager, and then he said it would help in the spring with the recruiting. And I have one other item.
Again, Dave, did you give that?
I did.
Tell everybody, thank
Yep.
you.
And page 2, 2 paragraphs up from item 7. Second line, it said he referred to 10-222.
Yes.
That's 10-220, 222.
Correct.
That's all I have.
Go ahead, Glenn.
On that same page, page 2, the 4th paragraph down, center sentence says to pay hangover costs. I believe that should probably be holdover costs. Don't like it was a hangover.
Yeah.
It's often
Just a
referred to
typo.
that way, but
Yeah.
you prefer hold, it's fine. Terry, you okay
But
with that?
that's that Dave, you're all around it.
Which paragraph am I in?
One about 10-22.
Yeah.
Oh, this one right there.
I think we've been using.
Oh, hangover, okay.
Hangover,
Yeah.
holdover.
Once you
synonymous.
say it.
Anyone else?
Rough night.
Just wanted to be clear before we move forward, Terry, you have all these corrections, you're comfortable with those? Yes. Thank you.
All right, hearing no one else, all those in favor of approving the minutes as they are amended? Opposed? So carried. All right, public comment.
We'll wait till later.
All righty. Anyone else? All right. Old business. Budget update. We heard anything new from the state? We'll have a new governor as of noon tomorrow, so we'll see what transpires from there. You haven't heard anything, Michael?
Yeah.
All right.
And I have not received ECS for January yet, so I'm keeping an eye on it every day. Did receive a little bit from Nash and Pequot, about $1,800. That's really about it at this point.
All right. Update on the local bridge project.
There was one significant, potentially very good news that we received, and we shared it at our January 3rd Board of Selectmen meeting. There is the possibility that we may have some assistance from State Representative Pat Boyd in the form of getting some additional help in the financing of a bridge. He has proposed potentially adding one of our bridges to a bond initiative that might potentially fund it 100%. The way these bond initiatives work, however, is there's 2 steps. There's one step in terms of creating a bonding bill and having an item such as funding of a bridge in that bill. And then there's another step of actually getting it funded and getting it on the agenda. So the fact that Representative Boyd is in the majority party would seem to make it easier, but there are going to be many, many requests that are going to be made during the year. So one of the things that we've been trying to figure out is if we were to go forward with this, which we would like to submit a bridge, what bridge makes the most sense to do, and how would we do it, and what might be the constraints? Because on one hand, from my perspective, the most expensive bridge we have right now, to Ron's point, is the Butts Bridge that's engineered. It's not fully engineered, but there's a risk that if we go down the bonding agenda route, we may not be able to participate in the local bridge program. You can't have both, so you can have one or the other. So there's no certainty of the time factor in terms of what Representative Boyd is attempting to do. I just want to make you aware that we're going to try and do everything we can, and Karen and John have been working closely with CME, and they may have some different ideas about going forward with another bridge rather than one of these 4 bridges. But we're looking to try to maximize the dollars to, obviously, so that we can take advantage of it. So could potentially be very good news, but it also could not lead anywhere, so.
When you go through the bonding, that usually bonding bill is passed near the end of the session with appropriations bills passed. Assuming it makes it through that process, when it gets on the bonding commission agenda, it's up to the governor.
Yes.
And that could be 6 months, a year later.
Well, the governor has clearly indicated in the press that it's not business as usual, and that was his, he's going to be looking at things from a fresh start. And so for us to presume that this is going to happen it might not be a good thing for us to presume it.
I would think in that direction, that if it does happen, it'll be off, way off in the future.
Yeah. And I think too, one of the things that I've seen from governors, whether it was Governor Rowland, Governor Rell, who I worked with, they were very supportive of projects that were ready to go, shovel-ready projects. So, and Governor Malloy was the same, because that is something that there can be immediate impact. So that's the thing we have to weigh in this too. I don't know how our new governor is going to look at things. Don't know. But from the Board of Selectmen's perspective, at our last meeting, the Board of Selectmen did vote to move forward with this. We did set a town meeting for January 22nd, which will adjourn to a referendum on January 29th, the voting between noon and 8 p.m. There are a couple of things, and Karen has done a phenomenal job because she's had to work closely with Doug Gillette and other folks to make sure that all the wording was correct in it. But we are looking for the Board of Finance to formally approve this, and we'll also be looking for the planning and zoning on the 17th to do the same. And so those are 2 of the steps we have to take. I don't know, Karen, if there's anything else you want to.
No, that's what you just discussed for the Board of Finance is included with this meeting. There's a resolution that has to be read and voted upon to move forward before any appropriation can, take place. So with hopes, even though in December you move forward to allow us to start this process, we officially have to do it this way for the attorney. So that's really it at this point.
All right. New business. All right, the first thing is to consider and act on a resolution recommending an appropriation and borrowing authorization for costs related to the replacement of Peak Brook Road Bridge over Peak Brook, bridge number 169017, replacement over the Hopkins Road Bridge over Stafford Brook, bridge number 169003, replacement of Butts Bridge over Peak Brook, bridge number 169018, and renovations to County Road Culvert Bridge over Gravelly Brook, including a related increase to the turning radii at the intersection of State Route 169 and County Road, and related work and improvements, and for the costs related to the financing of the project. And you all have a copy of the resolution in front of you.
Question about the resolution.
Yes.
Shouldn't it be, in the second sentence, should we recommend the town of Woodstock appropriate up to $2,500,000 versus $2,500,000?
Not at this point, in the schematics of it, it does say up to. Like, in other words, the documents that we have, when we go to referendum, it will say up to.
That's what the citizens will see.
Yes.
right? Okay.
So the actual resolution that we have to approve or not tonight says, resolved that the Board of Finance recommends that the town of Woodstock appropriate $2,500,000 for costs related to the replacement of Peak Brook Road Bridge over Peak Brook, bridge number 169017, replacement of Hopkins Road Bridge over Stafford Brook, bridge number 16003, replacement of Butts Road Bridge over Peak Brook, bridge number 16018, renovations to the County Road Culvert Bridge over Gravelly Brook, including a related increase to the turning radii at the intersection of 169 and County Road, and related work and improvements contemplated to include but not limited to related roadway, approach and traffic protection improvements. The first selectman is authorized to determine the scope and particulars of the project and to reduce or modify the scope of the project, and the entire appropriation may be spent on the project as so reduced or modified. The appropriation may be sent for design, construction, acquisition and installation costs, land and easement acquisition, equipment, materials, site improvements, consultants, engineering fees, grant application, and acceptance costs, legal fees, net interest on temporary borrowings, and other financing costs and other expenses related to the project. The town anticipates receiving reimbursement under State of Connecticut Local Bridge Program for eligible costs of the project in an estimated amount of $432,700 to be applied to defray in part of the appropriation. Do we have a motion to approve the resolution?
We were just approving it or forwarding it?
We're approving it and forwarding it to back to the Board of Selectmen.
So moved.
We have a motion, Mr. Chamorro and Mike.
Second, Mike. Bernard.
Any further discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Alrighty. Takes care of that. Next will be quarter reports, ending 12/31/18. Have those in front of you. Have any questions?
Dave, you dropped.
No questions? All right. Hearing none, we'll move on. Next item is school cost comparison. Mr. Lessig.
First of all,
I wanted to copy for the audience.
He's got some extras over there too.
the dates are 2/18, 2/19. I apologize.
No, I'm almost, I was looking again.
Oh,
Yeah, I passed that to all the kids. Good job.
Let's be done with looking for.
we started to have a conversation about December, and seems like we continually are discussing our pre-K 8 costs and our Woodstock Academy costs, and obviously in this unusual situation where we have control over our pre-K 8 costs, or have really good accounting of those, and we tuition to the academy. And our pre-K, our education budget includes some expenses that are spent by the academy but don't really reflect in their budget, specifically transportation and special education. We have this conversation, we've had it several times before. I thought it would kind of make sense for us to get those numbers out in front of us, fresh, start to have a conversation about it so that we're all on the same page of what our different schools are costing us. So basically what I did is I went into the budget and tried to pull some numbers out. I actually started pulling out special ed and transportation. And special ed gets very difficult to try to parse out between the pre-K 8 student body and the high school body. They share some resources. Some of the information is confidential. A lot of outplacements, so it's just really, really difficult to get hard numbers that you can assign to each school system. Transportation, we can talk about that. Thought it was a little bit easier. I just split it out percentage-wise by the number of students going to Woodstock Academy and the pre-K 8 program. Again, that gets a little difficult. Certainly there's a lot of high school students that aren't being transported by buses, but I'm sure as anybody who's driven by the elementary schools or the middle schools know that there's a lot of pre-K 8 students that aren't being transported by our buses either, that parents are delivering them. So I think it's difficult to try to get the numbers really hard, but I think in general we can take a look and take those transportation costs from our budget that are being spent by the academy and assign them that that's an expense that we're incurring for those students. So that's what I did, and kind of open for comments and so forth, but I just kind of get started on a conversation since we do have this very unusual situation in Woodstock that the majority of our high school students are being tuitioned to the academy, and how they actually show their expenses. And we just wanted to have let's start this conversation.
I have a couple of comments. I spent some time with the work that Glenn has done, and thank you, Glenn, for doing this. My suggestion would be to strip all transportation costs out of the equation if you're trying to calculate the education costs for a student at the academy versus the K through 8, strictly for the reasons that you mentioned. I don't know that's a straight calculation. Certainly a burden that has to be paid by the school district, and it has to be somewhere in the equation, but I'm not sure when we're looking at overall tuition, that should be part of the consideration. I think we're mandated by state law to provide a means of transportation, whether people take advantage of it or not. Secondly, as you said, I came to the same conclusion that special ed is, it's like taking a moving target year over year. You can have a student that requires $300,000 worth of services in the middle school this year. Next year they move to the academy. It's going to skew the numbers. So I think it would probably be, my initial thought would be a good idea to strip that out if we could too. And then we start looking at strictly the maintenance education side of the charges for each of these two facilities, if you will, or bodies. That might help us. I'm not sure what it's going to do to the percentages. It may all come out the same. I looked at your percentage numbers, and you had it. I stripped out transportation, and it went from pre-K through 8 was you had 66%. I got to 57.5, just stripping out the transportation. And the academy went up to 42% when you do it by the body count. There's another component here is other high school students. There are high schools that we send our children to that don't have insurance, if I understand that correctly. BOAG,
Right.
I believe Ellis Tech, is that true? Does anybody know?
Yeah, that's,
Yeah, so those need to be removed from the total student population when you do this calculation. So I think it's a great start. This is just my comments when I'm looking at it. If I was really gonna boil this number down, my business, I would pull all that stuff out, I'd get a number, then I would start putting it back in or separating it somehow. As I said, I'm not sure how much it's gonna really change anything. Or just be more accurate, and less prone to argument.
Yeah, I
Apples
agree.
and apples.
Yeah, that is perfectly fine, I don't think it's gonna make any difference, and really what I was trying to get at was that, there's some costs that, in this budget, that are for the academy, and we just need to appropriate them. If we strip it all out, that's fine, or if we try to put it in, either way.
Well-
Stripping it out is much simpler.
It'll boil it down
Yeah.
to strictly a tuition for education.
Yeah.
And then we can see what the percentage is. So that's my only comment. But this is great. Great starting point. Really stimulated me to think about this.
And I'm sure we're gonna be talking about the education budget a lot more as it's presented to us for this coming year. It's just some basis that we can, have as we go forward.
Okay. Dave?
I passed something around, you've seen it before. We didn't actually look at it last month, but we thought anyway. It kind of caught my eye. If you look about 3/4 of the page down, you see I highlighted an item.
That was,
Did it not get?
oh, okay, thank you.
That's fine.
Oh, this is yours? Yeah.
He's got to ask it too.
Oh, we got that. Really good.
That's page 7 of the financial statements. If you look about 3/4 of the page down, I highlighted something. It's,
Dave, excuse me, do you have could I have a copy of that? Do you have an extra?
yep,
Because I have your Board of Finance book that I keep all your stuff in.
I bet that's a big fat push.
Every meeting and all its contents.
it kind of grabbed me because it says program expenses and under education, 21,623,440. What grabbed me is that's a whole lot bigger than 17,282,000, which is what the budget was. So I asked the question of what's the other $4.3 million? I don't have enough detail at this point, but I do have a breakdown for about 4.2 million of it. These are the pension expense, which is covered by the state. That's 1.9 million. Post-retirement benefits, $200,241. Changes in BOE, OPEB plan.
Those are other
Other
post-employment
post-employment,
benefits, and that's because of GASB 75, the rules changed, now we have to report it, and it shows as more this year than last year.
Okay, well, that's 252,000. Depreciation, 309,000. Gross up of excess cost, 494,000, I'm rounding these off. Cafeteria fund, 312,000. Education grants fund expense, expenditures, $693,000. These are all additional monies that are being spent on education in the town of Woodstock that most of us never see. I mean, they're there, and you can see them. It just, you know, they kind of go, they pass by because they're not part of the budget. And the reason I'm bringing this up, other than the $4 million, is when we start comparing Woodstock Academy to WPS, a lot of these things don't apply to Woodstock Academy, but they do apply to the elementary school and middle school. And they're, you know, if you take out the pensions, take out the post-retirement benefits, now that I know what OPEB is, you end up with something, an additional cost that is, it's close to $2,600 per student. That's a big difference. And so, you know, it's one thing to look at what we're doing and understanding it, that includes this. And it's another thing when we start comparing to Woodstock Academy. There are things that we get by paying tuition and the construction cost that we don't see. All of these capital spending is another one. Capital spending is not on here, but we spend about $100,000 a year. If you just look at the non-lapsing account and see what we put in, what it started at, what it ended at over the last 4 or 5 years, it's about $100,000 a year. Plus whatever the town pitches in, which is usually another 10, 20, 30, it kind of varies a lot. Those are education costs. We don't see that from Woodstock Academy because that gets buried into the tuition. So when we're comparing these things, we gotta keep that in mind. Special ed is another issue. You can pull out Woodstock Academy special ed because that's separated out. And you can, if you work hard enough, pull out most of the outplaced special ed cost. We spend roughly 40% more on WPS special ed than we do on Woodstock Academy special ed, which may vary significantly from one year to the other. But if you got a really expensive case, they don't go to Woodstock Academy. They're outplaced. You know, the Woodstock Academy cases are the same as the cases that stay inside Woodstock Public School. So you can do that, but I would just be very careful trying to compare Woodstock Academy and Woodstock Public School, because if you really dig into it, WPS is about 88% of what it costs us at Woodstock Academy, which is about where it should be. Another big issue that's coming up, we're going to be facing going into this budget, and there's nobody here from the Board of Ed. If everything stayed flat, no changes on budgets for these extraordinary items, which of course are very much subject to change depending on what the state does. You got a 5.4% increase per student spending coming up just because of the enrollment drop. We're going to be down under 800 kids. I think 790 is from the October Board of Ed meeting. So people will need to keep that in mind. We're sliding down. I think Glenn shows 849. That's from the previous year. This year, it's 835, next year, 790. So it's undergoing some significant changes, which that public school is gonna have to keep that in mind and adjust accordingly. And deal with recognizing there's a whole lot more money being spent than we see or we recognize. I mean, this is like taking out the pension stuff, $2 million. The last comment I'll make is, I don't know, nobody knows what the state's gonna do. But this pension deal, anybody starts backtracking towards what Malloy was suggesting, which you start to hear, you're looking at $2.5 million here that the state's covering. If we had to cover a quarter of that, that's 600 grand. Never mind, we also got the academy. Another open question is, I don't know if these numbers the auditors assigned to Woodstock expenses are just Woodstock Public Schools, or do they include our share of what's done at Woodstock Academy? Because Woodstock Academy gets the same deal. Their retirement funds are covered by the state as well. I don't know what's in this 1.9.
I don't think it's part of ours,
I suspect that it's not.
but we can ask.
But yeah, that's one of the questions that's open. If it's not, however, and they do go that way, we're looking at, I'm guessing here, well, $150,000, $200,000 coming our way. Something to think about.
Ms. Richardson, I recognize what you're saying, and it's interesting. We'll have to try to dig into some of these other costs and assign them properly. But I'm not sure where you're getting your 88% number. It doesn't seem to be anywhere close to what we're seeing here on the numbers that are in front of us right now.
Well, yeah.
And another comment on special ed. Well, I think special ed is more difficult than what you're stating. And you did make an interesting comment when you said that if there was a severe case at the academy or a high school student, it really isn't part of the academy special ed because they're just outplaced.
Pre-K-3.
Okay, but then that immediately goes into the pre-K-8 budget. And what's kind of difficult for us here in Woodstock is that if we were in any other town, there would be the Board of Ed would be looking hard at programs to keep as many students as they possibly could in their school system. I can speak from my experience in Brooklyn at a K-8 system, which is not exactly the same, I'll admit that. But we worked hard at various groups of students. Rather than outplacing them, we tried to develop programs in-house because it was much less expensive. I would assume that Woodstock Public Schools does the same thing. You get to the academy, and I'm just talking here. I don't know for sure what happens. But what you just said, they don't have an incentive to do that. Why would they? And they don't. They don't have those programs. If they have behavioral problems, if you were in Killingly, they'd be looking at getting 5 or 6 kids together and hiring a teacher and keeping their costs down. We're in a situation where we're outplacing our students to the academy. They have no incentive to do that. Let's just send them to EastCon. And then that then becomes the expense of the pre-K-8 system. So I hear what you're saying, and we have to dig into it, but there's lots of things here that make it difficult and cumbersome, and I just think we need to keep in mind that we've got a lot of educators in both systems that are working hard and trying to do the best they can with the limited resources that we can give them as we we look at these numbers, we just have to try to make sure that we allocate them to both school systems using dicey, particularly with special ed.
If you look at 561, 562, 563, sections in the expense budget, detailed ones, you can break out much of it. Now, you can't do that from the budget that we normally would get, because for the last 3 years, we've been getting just big chunks of stuff that are all mushed together. But if we do, as we've discussed at the last 3 meetings, get the 10 count in detail by account, you can find a lot of that information.
Are you getting the same information from the academy to compare it to?
No, but if you look at that, you can see where that is. The academy for last year was $456,000 in special ed. That's what the academy got. If you isolate out all the special ed, take out all the outside stuff, take out, and then you can see what went to the academy, because that's one number, so it's really easy to look at. That's how you can separate it. I mean, you know, you can't get this down to $1,737.82. But you can get it down to, it's $1,600, $1,700 in one case, and it's $1,100 in the other case, which, by the way, that's roughly where it is. That's just the way it is.
But I think when we're comparing the school systems together, we need, as Dave said, strip out special education. Because it gets, because what you're saying is that those are the costs that the academy are incurring for students that, special ed students that they're accepting, that are going there. We know that there's high school students that if it was a regular Woodstock high school, would be going there as special ed students that are not going there. They're being outplaced. That we're, okay, so that would be part of that, would be part of that high school budget. So I think, and I'm not trying to really go after the academy on that. I don't think it's fair. So I think for our purposes, we need to compare the two schools as we talk. And is one system doing a good job or not? We have to split those numbers out.
Yeah, but you gotta be made sure when you're comparing apples to apples, and this 9,500 versus 14,500 is apples and watermelons, because you got $4 million worth of cost. Get rid of the retirement stuff, $2 million worth of cost that nobody even recognized.
Okay, so that was.
Well, I think part of, if I may, I think part of the problem is we can see all the costs that the town incurs when it comes to the pre-K through 8 school system. We only see what the tuition is, just like this is only looking at the tuition for pre-K to 8 at the moment, not all the pension stuff. We can't, the academy has the advantage of being able to fund things with, not just from tuition. They have other ways to raise capital to help defray the cost that they're charging us, which is, it's a great situation for us, but at the same time, if you want to look at the overall cost, I don't know that we can see that from the academy. I don't know if they're going to open their books up and let us see that.
Well,
Don't jump in this discussion for a minute. I think what we're talking about here is the level of resolution required to do a proper analysis. You can go back and forth all day and talk about it. Nobody's going to deny that the academy's a good school, and you know, Woodstock public schools are good. But I think we need a different level of resolution, and I think you're speaking to that, Jeff. And I want to make a comment on special ed. I think, Glenn, in your experience, wouldn't the majority of special ed be in the earlier years? With developmental issues, kids not being taught to read by their parents, learning how to count, essentially daycare in the earliest parts of their scholastic lives. So I would think that the special ed charges would be greater at WPS than they would be at the academy level.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you make an excellent point. There are a lot of special ed charge costs very early, at 1.5, 2 years old. They're identifying students that need support, and that's where the heavy special ed is. By the time they're in high school, some problems have worked out.
Right.
Some identified and been corrected, or they're in a program that
Or
supports.
special ed doesn't mean they're permanently disabled in some way.
Right, so there's a lot of, I don't know, my children had speech therapy. That's considered, okay, and that, as a lot of students do in those younger years. So yeah, you're absolutely right, and that, again, is why I think all I wanna do is kind of have a conversation about how the different schools, budgets of the different school systems, as we sit here, we talk about a $500 capital expense from the academy, whatever it is, and we try to, and I hear this feeling that, oh, the academy is a great deal and the WPS is not. I just want to, get the numbers out there and try to compare them apples to apples as much as we can, and, have a firm grasp on it so we can make the decisions, as we support budgets.
And I also think, to Jeff's point, that the academy has a makeup amount that they're contributing to offset
I mean,
their
we're-
tuition,
Right.
their
We look at the total
costs.
cost pre-K to 8 as the town's responsibility versus just the tuition cost for what Woodstock Academy charges the town. I'm sure there are costs above and beyond what we pay as a town, that the academy is able to raise. That fortunately for the town, we don't have to directly pay. But in the end, I don't know what the difference is. The academy's gonna send us a bill and that's that.
Yeah.
We can bang our heads on the wall and say that pre-K through 8 is the best deal in the state, and it doesn't matter, because if it's gotta get cut because Woodstock Academy sends us a tuition bill, that's the end of it.
Well, Woodstock Academy is, the numbers you're referring to are pretty big numbers. I can tell you that. The additional
Right.
funding, we're talking, not tens of millions, but millions of
No, I
dollars.
get it, no, I get it.
Woodstock Academy is in a situation unlike any public school system, where they have to run it like a business, because if their tuition isn't competitive, they got a problem. If they lost Brooklyn, Pomfret, for students, their whole business model collapses. So they're in a little bit different position than the rest of us are. They're also in a little bit different position when it comes to some of this other funding, because they don't get that. They have other funds we don't see and we don't have to pay for. All I'm saying is, let's be sure we're recognizing everything. Our cost as far as Woodstock Academy is concerned is tuition, construction cost, and special ed. They're really easy to identify because they're right in the budget. You can find them, because I spent a couple of hours doing it and I was able to find them.
So not to take any side in this, and I know that's the way this whole thing seems to be going back and forth, but that's not the intention. But when you're talking about a business model, and then somebody comes up to you and says, we're gonna charge you $500 extra next year so we can do roofs that we didn't set money aside to pay for on our own as part of our business, that doesn't sound like a good business model.
No.
All right? It sounds to me like it's a failing business model, and it's an act of desperation. Now, on the surface, laugh if you want, Dave. You don't walk up to somebody and double their construction costs in one single year and call it part of a good planned business model.
Has anybody talked to Chris Sanford about this?
They're looking at charging $500 on this.
You talked to him about it. And what are they talking about though?
We're for a good surprise. Bob here through the grapevine that they're coming through with a 3.5% increase plus the $500 per student.
3.65
3.65
plus 500.
plus $500,
So,
which is about
so I'm not
$1,000
saying,
per student.
so I'm not, I don't mean to sound demeaning towards their business model. I'm just saying before we say, hey, if any of us had an oil delivery guy that showed up in a driveway and is gonna charge us 3.65% more this year because he needs to buy a new truck, we'd get somebody else. Now, we can't do that, obviously, because we're committed to this arrangement.
You realize, Dave, if the Board of Education budget stayed flat zero change. It's a 5.4% per student increase.
And I wouldn't let them off the hook either, Dave. I'm just getting the numbers out there. That's
In
it.
fact, I'm not even throwing this out as one side versus the other side. I'm throwing out here is a bunch of information that people have not considered, including me. I mean, I have no excuse or reason why I never noticed this before. I mean, because once you notice it, it's like the hangover
Yeah.
deal. Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
That I agree.
It's a huge number, and I'm saying to myself, how did I never noticed this before? I've only been looking at these things for like 12 years.
I think Glenn's on the right path here, Dave. He's looking to gain some understanding, some resolution of the costs, and I think that's really the message here. And I think we're, no matter what's said, I think that's what we're looking to do. Just gain some understanding.
Yes.
I agree. It is what it is. Nobody's saying it's not legitimate.
Appropriate the money to them, and if they have to work out, we can where to spend it. To give them the hands to get at it.
What it's gonna come down to again is there's only gonna be a certain amount of money spent. And that's
all we can
when the decision's gonna have to be made.
Right, and that's what it is.
That's it. You know, Prop 46, and that's it, so
They give them the money and.
whatever they
and
have to
that's why we
spend,
have the
going
Board of
to
Ed
our
and
max.
Make their decisions, and the academy's gonna, you know, we're gonna have to make our decisions moving forward. As we do every year, it's nothing new. I mean, the Board of Ed sits through, I mean, I've sat through them, hours and hours and hours upon what, you know, you got a bunch of people sitting around, okay, do we remove art, do we remove music, and then the backlash. We do it every year. Do the best you can. I'm not saying anything, but the middle school, K through 8 program works on a very small budget in comparison to the rest of the state. You know, we're in the lower tier of what we spend per student. Aside from your numbers, I mean, every school system gets that same benefits from the state. But we spend, you know, whatever it is today, I don't know what our rank is, but we do a good job at the lower grades. And the academy does a great job too. Most of the schools in Woodstock are good schools.
All right, well, I think probably the best thing to do is table this for now and just everybody kind of look over the numbers, and as, you know, was mentioned, you've got in the latest school quarterly report here, you have the actual numbers that are allocated for those different accounts. So you can take a look at that, and we can discuss it some more when we get towards budget.
I was kind of hoping that there'd be somebody from the POE here tonight, so that at least there'd be some appreciation going forward of
The fact that we're discussing it.
and the limits that are on this.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't always seem to be an awareness that this is not an unlimited situation. We can, you know, we start out, you know, in a stratosphere, it's not particularly helpful. It's not helpful to anybody, actually, even including the Board of Education.
What's that?
Maybe Dave and I can get together, we'll try to hammer out a few more numbers and bring it back.
Sounds good. All right.
Thanks, Glenn. I'll bring things so make it happen.
You look so excited.
Yes. I can pour over a few numbers. Sure.
I was happy to say.
Well, you have done so much work already, I just thought it was only fair.
All right, public comment. Go ahead, Michael.
On the general government side, just want to bring you up to date on what we've done so far. We have sent out, Karen has sent out the budget requests for the various departments. We've got 2 of them back so far. Typically, this is the point where we start to think about getting together and start going through, you know, what the Board of Selectmen would like to see in terms of what the initial thoughts are. listen to the spirited conversation about education. You know, we are following up on our discussion at the tri-board meeting about having Attorney Rich Roberts hold and meet with members of the various boards. So I know Mike is gonna be there for the Board of Finance, I'll be there for the Board of Selectmen, Karen will be there, Megan will be there for the Board of Education. I know Janice is gonna be there as well. And we're exploring the revenue theme that had come up, if there's anything in the Proposition 46 world that allows that. So we have sent over to Attorney Roberts, as he requested, any of the information, any of the opinions that we have on file about Prop 46. And then that meeting is gonna be next Tuesday, so we will have that discussion. I don't envision that there's huge new programs that our budget is gonna allow us to move forward with, but, you know, we haven't had that candid discussion yet among the selectmen in terms of what the individual priorities of the selectmen are. I suspect that, you know that we have a 2.5% contractual increase on the union side. We have a sense that several of our employees are undercompensated, so we want to make some adjustments there. But, you know, what guidance can you give me as a board in terms of going back to our Board of Selectmen next Thursday for our Board of Selectmen meeting? We will have Karen there. Karen is going to be briefing us on where we are mid-year as it relates to the fiscal year that we're in right now. But looking ahead to the new fiscal year, maybe we're still a little premature, but just sounds like the sounds of things are that, you know, it's gonna be another tight year.
It is. Biggest thing we gotta get is our certified numbers for the tax base. And once we have that, then we've got a starting point. Until we actually get that certified number, can't do anything, because we can't even figure out what Proposition 46 allows. So,
But we usually, generally speaking, we suggest, like to the Board of Ed, to come in with zero-based and then perhaps prepare another budget that would accommodate making certain changes that you want to make, maybe even have 3 of them, so that you have some options there. You may not want to spend the time doing that, but we talk to the Board of Ed every year about that.
yeah.
We ask them to do that, come in with a zero-based budget, and then if I had this is what I would do. I'm not speaking for the whole board here, but I know that that's the theme we bring up every year.
Basically, because we know that there are some costs that you have no control over. Like you say, union contracts and whatnot. That's something you can't control. So unless you cut somewhere else, then there's definitely gonna be an increase in the budget. But yeah, we definitely start off with we'd like to see 0%. And we know that's probably not at all a possibility, but yeah, what would it mean? What kind of cuts would there have to be to attain that? You know, how much would that really hurt?
One of those cuts should be put in a priority order so that you can see, you know, this is the cut, this is the
This is the
cost,
effect.
this is number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and if there's money, what can you pick from? I mean, that's what you do in business.
Or if we need an increase, what's the increase for, what's the reasoning for it?
Well, you know, we always talk about this thing, and it irks me every year, is what's the limit of Prop 46 gonna be? So we can see how much we can spend. The taxpayers have been gracious enough for the last 4 or 5 years to come in and say, sure, and approve it at referendum. I would hope one of these years, one, they wake up and actually pay attention, or is the state? The state could pull $500,000 out, and it might not even be visible dollars. It could be some of those other dollars from that 4 million, for example, that changes the whole landscape.
Right.
And Prop 46 becomes immaterial, because just basically covering the cuts, you could be looking at tax increases of 4 or 5 or 6%, which usually that's about where the level is that it gets attention. I think, we should be thinking about it in those terms, not just how much can we manage to squeeze under Prop 46 this year.
Well, like
Kind
I
of
said,
backwards way of budgeting.
we do need to know that figure, so we don't exceed it.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Dave,
It's
you'll
not-
get a chance to make that argument.
It's not the target day.
I know.
Well, I know.
And we'll look forward to it.
Yeah. Yep. All right, any other public comment? Woody?
As you know, I have trouble hearing in here, but tonight and the other times that I've been in attendance here, I have to say that this commission and also listening to the town, I really get the feeling everybody's firing on all cylinders. It's good. I have real trust in the way finances are run in this town. I'm in approval of the direction the town has taken. I like the discussion that happened tonight, and I wish I could hear every word, but I hear enough to know that it's going. I'm pretty happy with it. Second thing is I'm also very happy with the minutes. The minutes are much more than the legal minimum, which is, I believe, just a motion, who made the motion. One of the complaints that I've heard from boards and commissions is the public never comes in. They're not interested. Well, I don't know whether they're interested, but if they are interested, the minutes are complete. And I think if they want to go back and check anything, the minutes are, well, they're complete.
Okay. Anyone else? Preston?
Yeah, I was concerned that like the $650,000 in grants that are in, that may not be able, if the school lost its grants, you may not be able to go back against Prop 46 to get that money back in tax increases if you're up against the limit, right, Jimmy?
Well, that's not actually part of what's been in there, because then that's not on the books. That's $650,000.
That's not the 17 million.
I have no idea. It's not about the 17 million or anything else.
Right.
And for all practical purposes, I don't think probably most anybody in this room even knew about it. Maybe Karen did. Frank would have, but most people aren't even aware of it.
Well, a lot of the special ed superintendent, Tricia still was being covered by grants, and that was kind of subtracted out, that you never really saw a real salary in the school budget.
Yeah. Anyone else? All right, anything else from the board?
I have one item. Last meeting, we spent a lot of time talking about the $30,000
Yeah.
that showed up in a non-lapsing account. I mentioned this during that discussion with the auditor. There was actually $74,000 that was taken out of the reserve account. It shows 71, but there was a $2,900 interest income against it. So it's $74,000 that's out of the reserve account. 30,000 of it is sitting in a non-lapsing account. Our question is, where's the other $44,000? I think the Board of Education and the school administration needs needs to give us a written explanation of what happened to that money. On June 12th, there was a $22,000 surplus in the healthcare account. It's all documented from the meeting, and I think even Jen Hawkins referenced it in some of her emails, because the issue was whether that money could be transferred, Between June 12th and June 30th, we went from a $22,000 surplus to $74,000 out of the reserve account. Where's the 44 grand? Somebody needs to explain that. If nobody can find it, then we're gonna need somebody to go in there and find it, i.e. a forensic account. Because that kind of stuff doesn't get picked up in a regular audit. Right. As you saw, because they didn't pick it up. Where's the 44 grand? It's gotta be someplace. And there may be a real simple explanation. Well, let's get the explanation. No, she's not here.
Well, I mean, certainly the chair could craft a letter to the business, or to Victor, or Ed, ask the question.
Well, I mean, Dave's the one with the details. of the
He's
question.
got all the details.
Let him write the, so let him write the letter.
If you want to draft up a letter, and
I'll send it to you.
and then we'll forward it to them.
Get a job.
Sounds good. All right, correspondence and announcements. One thing I have is our next meeting will be February the 12th.
So other from board,
Go ahead.
we have this nice projector here. I noticed that the auditors didn't use the projector for show slides. We don't seem to get our other presentations any longer. I think when we have the public here, that's
I think
particularly
you're right.
helpful.
Yes, it is,
Not-
because everybody can see the screen.
Right. So I would encourage.
So I think it's something worth looking into.
I'm sorry?
Utilizing the overhead.
Yeah, we were just talking about that. I think we may be doing a PowerPoint presentation for the budget.
We used to always.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there was Mike.
Or even having the handouts ready, instead of just put the handouts up on the screen as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, I guess next order of business is adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
All those in favor? Opposed? So moved.